One man, one afternoon, 5 goals, a World Cup record that more than 30 years later, no one has ever come close to matching. And the man who set it, you've probably never even heard his name. His name is Oleg Salenko. And on a hot afternoon in the summer of 1994, he did something no footballer had ever done at a World Cup, and no one has done since. He scored 5 goals in a single match. He finished the tournament sharing the golden boot with one of the most feared strikers on the planet. He was 25 years old, and he would never play for his country again. This is the story of the greatest day a forgotten man ever had, and the silence that swallowed it. To understand how strange that afternoon really was, you have to understand the team he played for. A team that was already finished before he ever stepped onto the pitch. Oleg Salenko was a child of Soviet football. Born in Leningrad, raised inside the brutal, beautiful machine that turned out technicians by the thousand. He was a born finisher, quick feet, a cold nerve in front of goal, the kind of striker who made hard chances look like formalities. By his early 20s, he was scoring freely and earning his move west, the dream of every kid raised behind the Iron Curtain. But here's the cruel twist of history. The country that made him no longer existed. The Soviet Union had collapsed, and the team that flew to America in 1994 carried a brand new flag, Russia, and a dressing room quietly tearing itself apart. Before a single ball was kicked, the Russia squad had mutinied. A players' revolt. Arguments over money, over bonuses, over the men in charge. Half the team barely wanted to be there. So they played like it. They lost their opening match, then they lost the second. And just like that, before their final group game had even kicked off, Russia were out. Eliminated. Going home. Which meant that when they walked out to face Cameroon on the 28th of June, in the California heat, in front of a half-empty, half-curious crowd, the game meant nothing. There was nothing left to play for. Nothing, that is, except one man's private revolution. It started early, a cross, a clean strike. 1-0, then a second. The neutrals sat up. Then, against every law of a game that no longer mattered, a third. And Oleg Salenko had a World Cup hat-trick in a match his country had already lost before kickoff. But here is the detail that history loves most. At the other end of the very same pitch, Cameroon had their own miracle. Roger Miller, 42 years old, rose from the bench and scored. The oldest goalscorer in the history of the World Cup. 2 records being written into the books on the same patch of grass on the same meaningless afternoon. And still, Salenko wasn't finished. A 4th went in, and then a 5th, 5 goals, in one World Cup match. No one in history had ever done it. So that night, the record books were rewritten. And they have stayed rewritten ever since, through every World Cup, every superstar, every golden generation. That number has never been touched. When the tournament ended, Salenko had 6 goals in total. Exactly as many as Hristo Stoichkov, the Bulgarian superstar, the Barcelona icon, the beating heart of the best attacking side at the World Cup. A man who would win the Ballon d'Or that same year. And the two of them, side by side, shared the golden boot. A kid from a country that had ceased to exist, standing level with one of the giants of the game. It should have been the beginning of everything. But this is exactly where the story turns. Because Russia appointed a new manager, Oleg Romantsev, and by Salenko's own account, the new coach simply did not like that his player had become more famous than he was. So the man who had just made World Cup history was never picked for his national team again. Not once more. At 25 years old, the record opened doors for a while. A big move to Valencia in Spain, then in 1995 to Glasgow Rangers. But the goals never came back the way they'd left. The injuries crept in. The clubs got smaller, the headlines quieter. And slowly, almost without anyone noticing, the greatest goal scorer of USA '94 simply disappeared from the only stage that had ever truly seen him. The record, though, those 5 goals, it's still there tonight. Untouched, more than 30 years of Ronaldo's and Messi's and Mbappe's, and not one of them has matched what a forgotten Russian did on an afternoon nobody was supposed to remember. Maybe that's the cruelest kind of greatness there is. Not the kind that builds a career, brick by brick, but the kind that arrives all at once, perfect and complete, on a day when no one's really watching, and is gone before you understand what you just saw. Oleg Salenko did something no one else has ever done. The record remembers him forever. The game, almost not at all. If you want more of football's forgotten greats, the geniuses the game left behind, there's one story I think you need to hear next.